Hi, it's just me, Storyteller Mitch again. It's gonna take like an hour for my last video to upload, and we're getting close to the end. We're at 9, one more chapter, and then it's the ending, the epilogue. So I'm gonna try to finish this today. Got some water here. Pardon if my voice cracks a bit. I'm gonna lie down while reading this. It'll be a lot comfy. For me, anyway. So, without further ado, hopefully this sounds okay. I apologize if it doesn't. Chapter 9 of Queer by William S. Burroughs, I should say. I'm gonna try and finish this today before I misplaced the book again. Alright, Chapter 9. They took a riverboat to Babahoya, swinging in hammocks, sipping brandy, and watching the jungle slide by. Springs, moss, beautiful clear streams, and trees up to 200 feet high. Lee and Allerton were silent as the boat powered upriver, penetrating the jungle stillness with its lawnmower whine. From Babahoya, they took a bus over to the Andes to Ambato, a cold, jolting 14-hour ride. They stopped for a snack of chickpeas at a hut at the top of the mountain pass, far above the tree line. A few young native men in gray felt hats ate their chickpeas in sullen resignation. Several guinea pigs were squeaking and scurrying around on the dirt floor of the hut. Their cries reminded Lee of the guinea pig he owned as a child in the Fairmont Hotel in St. Louis, when the family was waiting to move into their new house on Price Road. He remembered the way the pig shrieked and the stink of its cage. They passed the snow-covered peak of Chimborazo, cold in the moonlight and the constant wind of the high Andes. The view from the high mountain pass seemed from another, larger planet than Earth. Lee and Allerton huddled together under a blanket, drinking brandy, the smell of wood smoke in their nostrils. They were both wearing Army Plus jackets zipped up over sweatshirts to keep out the cold and wind. Allerton seemed insubstantial as a phantom. Lee could almost see through him to the empty phantom bus outside. The Ambato to Puyo along the edge of the gorge, 1,000 feet deep. There were waterfalls and forests and streams running down over the roadway as they descended into the rush-green valley. Several times the bus stopped to remove large stones that had slid onto the road. Lee was talking on the bus to an old prospector named Morgan, who had been 30 years in the jungle. Lee asked him about ayahuasca. "Acts on them like opium," Morgan said. "All my Indians use it. Can't get any work out of them for 3 days when they get on ayahuasca." "I think there may be a market for it," Lee said. Morgan said, "I can get any amount." Past the prefabricated mugloads of shell Mara, the shell company had spent 2 years and $20 million, found no oil, and pulled out. They got into Puyo late at night and found a room in a ramshackle hotel near the general store. Lee and Allerton were too exhausted to speak, and they fell asleep at once. Next day, Old Man Morgan went around with Lee trying to score for ayahuasca. Allerton was still sleeping. They hit a wall of evasion. One man said he would bring some the following day. He knew he could not bring any. They went to a little saloon run by a mulatto woman. She pretended not to know what ayahuasca was. Lee asked if ayahuasca was illegal. "No," said Morgan, "but the people are suspicious of strangers." They sat there drinking aguardiente mixed with hot water and sugar and cinnamon. Lee said his racket was shrunken down heads. Morgan figured they could start a head shrinking plant. Heads rolling off the assembly line, he said, and you can't buy those heads at any price. The government forbids it, you know. The blighters are killing people to sell the heads. Morgan had an inexhaustible fund of old dirty jokes. He was talking about some local character from Canada. How did he get down here? Lee asked. Morgan chuckled. How did we all get down here? Spot of trouble in our own country, right? Lee nodded without saying anything. Old man Morgan went back to Shellmara on the afternoon bus to collect some money owed him. Lee talked to a Dutchman named Sawyer, who was farming near Poyo. Sawyer told him there was an American botanist living in the jungle a few hours out of Poyo. He is trying to develop some medicine. I forget the name of it. If he succeeds in concentrating this medicine, he says he will make a fortune. Now he is having a hard time. He has nothing to eat out there. Lee said, I am interested in medicinal plants. I may pay him a visit. Lee will be glad to see you, but take along some flour or tea or something. They have nothing out there. Later, Lee said to Allerton, a botanist, what a break. He is our man. We will go tomorrow. We can hardly pretend we just happened by, said Allerton. How are you going to explain your visit? I will think of something. Best tell him right out I want a score for Yaga. I figure maybe there is a buck in it for both of us. According to what I hear, he is flat on his ass. We are lucky to hit him in that condition. If he wants in the chips and drinking champagne out of galoshes and the whorehouses of Poyo, he would hardly be interested to sell me a few hundred sucres worth of Yaga. And Jean, for the love of Christ, when we do overhaul this character, please don't say Dr. Cotter, I presume. The hotel room in Poyo was damp and cold. The houses across the street were blurred by the pouring rain, like a city underwater. Lee was picking up articles off the bed and shoving them into a rubber-sized sack. A .32 automatic pistol, some cartridges wrapped in oil silk, a small frying pan, tea and flour packed in cans and sealed with adhesive tape, 2 quarts of poro. Allerton said, this booze is the heaviest item and the bottle's got like sharp edges. Why don't we leave it here? We'll have to loosen his tongue, Lee said. He picked up the sack and handed Allerton a shiny new machete. Let's wait till the rain stops, said Allerton. Wait till the rain stops, he collapsed on the bed with a loud, simulated laughter. Ha ha ha. Wait till the rain stops. They got a saying down here like, I'll pay you what I owe you when it stops raining in Poyo. Ha ha. We had 2 clear days when we first got here. I know, a latter-day miracle. There's a movement on foot to canonize the local padre. Vamonos, cabron. He slapped Allerton's shoulder, and they walked out in the rain, slipping on the wet cobblestones of the main street. The trail was corduroy. The wood of the trail was covered with a film of mud. They cut long canes to keep from slipping, but it was slow walking. High jungle with hardwood forest on both sides of the trail, and very little undergrowth. Everywhere was water, springs and streams and rivers of clear cold water. Good trout water, Lee said. They stopped at several houses to ask where Cotter's place was. Everyone said they were headed right. How far? 2-3 hours? Maybe more. Word seemed to have gone ahead. Some man they met on the trail shifted his machete to shake hands and said, At once you are looking for Cotter. He is in this house now. How far? Lee asked. The man looked at Lee and Allerton. It will take you about 3 hours more. They walked on and on. It was late afternoon now. They flipped a coin to see who would ask at the next house. Allerton lost. He says 3 more hours, Allerton said. We've been hearing that for the past 6 hours. Allerton wanted to rest. Lee said, No, if you rest your legs get stiff. It's the worst thing you can do. Who told you that? Old man Morgan. Well, Morgan or no, I am going to rest. Don't make it too long. It would be a hell of a note if we get caught short, stumbling over snakes and jaguars in the dark and falling into quebrajas. Quebrajas? That's what they call these deep crevices cut by streams of water. Some of them are 60 feet deep and 4 feet wide, just room enough to fall in. They dropped to rest in the deserted house. The walls were gone, but there was a roof that looked pretty sound. We could stop here in a pinch, said Allerton. Look around. A definite pinch. No blankets. Just making sure it doesn't fall asleep on me. Alright. It was dark when they reached Cotter's place, a small thatched hut in a clearing. Cotter was a wiry little man in his middle 50s. Lee observed that the reception was a bit cool. Lee brought out the liquor and they all had a drink. Cotter's wife, a large, strong-looking, red-haired woman, made some tea with cinnamon to cut the kerosene taste of the puro. Lee got drunk on 3 drinks. Cotter was asking Lee a lot of questions. How did you happen to come here? Where are you from? How long have you been in Ecuador? Who told you about me? Are you a tourist or traveling on business? Lee was drunk. He began talking in junkie lingo, explaining that he was looking for Yaga or Ayahuasca. He understood the Russians and the Americans were experimenting with the drug. Lee said he figured there might be a buck in the deal for both of them. The more Lee talked, the cooler Cotter's manner became. The man was clearly suspicious, but why or what, Lee could not decide. Dinner was pretty good, considering the chief ingredient was sort of a fibrous root and bananas. After dinner, Cotter's wife said, "These boys must be tired, Jim." Cotter led the way with a flashlight that developed power by pressing a lever. A cot about 30 inches wide made of bamboo slats. "I guess you can both make out here," he said. Cotter's was spreading a blanket on the cot as a mattress, with another blanket as cover. Lee lay down on the cot next to the wall. Allerton lay on the outside, and Cotter adjusted the mosquito net. "Mosquitoes?" Lee asked. "No, vampire bats," Cotter said shortly. "Good night." "Good night." Lee's muscles ached from the long walk. He was very tired. He put one arm across Allerton's chest and snuggled close to the boy's body. A feeling of deep tenderness flowed out of Lee's body at the warm contact. He snuggled closer and stroked Allerton's shoulder gently. Allerton moved irritably, pushing Lee's arm away. Slack off, will you, and go to sleep." Slack off, will you, and go to sleep. That sounds better, doesn't it? Said Allerton. He turned on his side with his back to Lee. Lee drew his arm back. His whole body contracted with the shock. Slowly he put his hand under his cheek. He felt a deep hurt, as though he were bleeding inside. Tears ran down his face. He was standing in front of the ship Ahoy. The place looked deserted. He could hear someone crying. He saw his little son and knelt down and took the child in his arms. The sound of crying came closer, a wave of sadness, and now he was crying, his body shaking in sobs. He held little Willie close against his chest. A group of people were standing there in convict suits. Lee wondered what they were doing there and why he was crying. When Lee woke up, he still felt the deep sadness of his dream. He stretched out a hand towards Allerton, then pulled it back. He turned around and faced the wall. Next morning, Lee felt dry and irritable, and empty of feeling. He borrowed Cotter's .22 rifle and set out with Allerton to have a look at the jungle. The jungle seemed empty of life. "Cotter says the Indians have cleaned most of the game out of the area," said Allerton. "They all had shotguns from the money they made working for Shell." They walked along a trail, huge trees, some over 100 feet high, matted with vines, cut off the sunlight. "May God grant we kill some living creature," Lee said. "Jean, I hear something squawking over there. I'm going to try and shoot it." "What is it?" How should I know? It's alive, isn't it? Lee pushed through the undergrowth beside the trail. He tripped on a vine and fell into a sawtoothed plant. When he tried to get up, 100 sharp points caught his clothes. He struck into his I'm jumbling over my words here. Okay, when he tried to get up, 100 sharp points caught his clothes and stuck into his flesh. Gene, he called, help me. I've been seized by a man-eating plant. Gene, cut me free with the machete. They did not see a living animal in the jungle. Cotter was supposedly trying to find a way to extract curare from the arrow poison the Indians used. He told Lee there were yellow crows to be found in the region and a yellow catfish with extremely poisonous spines. His wife had gotten spined, and Cotter had to administer morphine for the intense pain. He was a medical doctor. Lee was struck by the story of the monkey woman. A brother and sister had come down to this part of Ecuador to live the simple, healthful life on roots and berries and nuts and palm hearts. 2 years later, a search party had found them, hobbling along on improvised crutches, toothless and suffering from half-healed fractures. It seems there was no calcium in the area. Chickens couldn't lay eggs. There was nothing to form the shell. Cows gave milk, but it was watery and translucent with no calcium in it. The brother went back to civilization and steaks, but the monkey woman was still there. She earned her moniker by watching what monkeys ate. Anything a monkey eats, she can eat. Anybody can eat. It's a handy thing to know if you get lost in the jungle. Also handy to bring along some calcium tablets. Even Cotter's wife had lost her teeth in a thurvith. His were long gone. He had a 5-foot viper guarding his house from prowlers after his precious curare notes. He also had 2 tiny monkeys, cute but ill-tempered and equipped with sharp little teeth, and a 2-toed sloth. Sloths live on fruit and trees, swinging along upside down and making a sound like a crying baby. On the ground they were helpless. This one just lay there and thrashed about and hissed. Cotter warned them not to touch it, even on the back of the neck, since it would reach around with its long, sharp claws and drive them through one's hand, then pull it to its mouth and start biting. Cotter was evasive when Lee asked about ayahuasca. He said he was not sure Yaga and ayahuasca were the same plant. Ayahuasca was connected with brujeria, witchcraft. He himself was a white brujo. He had access to Burroughs' secrets. Lee had no such access. It would take you years to gain their confidence. Lee said he did not have years to spend on the deal. Can't you get me some? He asked. Cotter looked at him sourly. I've been out here 3 years, he said. Lee tried to come on like a scientist. I want to investigate the properties of this drug, he said. I am willing to take some as an experiment. Cotter said, well, I could take you down to Canela and talk to a Burroughs. He will give you some if I say so. That would be very kind, said Lee. Cotter did not say any more about going to Canela. He did say a lot about how short they were on supplies and how he had no time to spare from his experiments with the curare substitute. After 3 days, Lee saw he was wasting time and told Cotter they were leaving. Cotter made no attempt to conceal his relief. And that is chapter, 9? Well, that's it for this video. Accidentally. Alright. Thank you very much for listening. Ciao.